One last ticket before it's gone. One last summer before it's fall.
People come to the Cariboo to come and fish kokanee and lake trout and rainbow. And it's one of these places where you can pick a different lake any day and go and target a different species, go and fish a unique fishery, different lakes, different colored water. You could have lots of islands in a lake to something that's basically a big channel between the mountains.
I think that first lake we went to, that hit me like it was also a fantastic day of fishing, but it was like every cast and we could count it down. It was just like, we're gonna get a fish in 3, 2, 1.
And I can't stop to breathe.
Looks like we are live Sunday evening. This is the Fishing BC live show. This event is broadcasting through Fishing BC's Facebook page as well as Fishing BC YouTube tonight. My name is Brent Gill. If you can see that on the screen, we are streaming with Mark Roseboom from Lone Butte Sporting Goods and Lone Butte Fishing Adventures. Hey, Mark, how are you? Welcome to the show tonight.
Good, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Hey, good to see you again. Where are you streaming from?
I'm actually at the store. Only place I could get good enough internet.
Just can't get away from the store. That's part of being in retail, isn't it? You kind of live there.
It's yeah.
Yeah.
They should have told me that before I bought a store.
Yeah. There's a lot of things they don't tell you before you get into sporting goods retail. That's for sure. This evening, I'm streaming from Quilchena, which is off of Nicola Lake. We had a rise in temperatures today. It was 3 degrees. Some of the snow's melting. What's going on up in the Cariboo where you are?
We're about 0 degrees. Quite a bit of wind today. Going to be some snow tomorrow. So
yeah, right in the middle of the winter. Well, I guess the start of that stream was a video that actually I shot with you and Kate Watson this summer, and we were doing some kokanee fishing on a few lakes in the area. And I guess the topics tonight, we're going to kind of go over some of popular techniques and things to look at and what's kind of gone on with the kokanee fishing scene in British Columbia over the last 10 years. More specifically, it seems that it's becoming quite a bit more popular, and maybe you can pipe in on some of that. Any reason why that kokanees just started to really catch the attention of anglers in BC?
Kokanee fishing in BC is one of those fisheries that you can go pretty much year round and catch some fish, and they're good table fare, and it can be a family outing to summertime fishing, ice fishing. Anybody can do it. So
yeah, for sure. And that's always a bonus when the peak season also lines up when maybe kids are out of school, weather's good, nicer time to be out on the lakes, not kind of like the late April, early May or October stuff like that. Are kokanee, as easy to catch at certain periods of the season on lakes, or is there a peak that you prefer?
I like fishing kind of that end of May, June time for kokanee. It's going to push them down a little bit off the surface and kind of make it kind of go along with the weather, so to speak. And yeah.
End of May and June. Now you're in the Cariboo, is there a pretty well-known short list of some of the better kokanee fisheries in that kind of intermediate area where you are there?
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty long list actually.
Yeah, we could try the shorter one.
All right, Highway 24, Bridge Lake, Deca, Sulphurous Hathaway are kind of going to be your ones. Horse Lake's coming on strong again, so
right.
Yeah.
Bridge, Deca, Horse, those are there's a pretty big program from the Freshwater Fishery Society and concerns to stocking and
for sure, big stocking program. A lot of diploid kokanee,
gotcha.
Large kokanee as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of the trademark of some of those larger lakes in the Cariboo. If I'm not wrong, there could be some pretty nice sized kokanee caught in those lakes.
For sure, getting into that 3 to 4 pound fish is,
Wow.
that's it's a good fish.
What what's the pretty common regulations there for retention? I mean, that's something that we all know is Kokanee are a very popular table fare. And what's the retention on some of those larger lakes?
You're going to be most of the lakes in the Cariboo are going to be, or along the Highway 24 is going to be a 5 fish limit, 2-day possession.
5 per angler, 2-day total possession. Yeah, well, that definitely makes it attractive, and you can see why. People have really started to jump on it. I'd say the last decade, it's almost doubled the amount of anglers targeting Kokanee.
For sure. I'd say last 5 years that it really took off, and I think it kind of coincides with the river fisheries and closures and stuff. People are looking for that fishery that they can get to and keep a couple of fish and put some food on the table.
Yeah, I would also imagine a lot of the sockeye fans have migrated over to the Kokanee world too. I mean, it's just a smaller version of the same fish and just as tasty for the people that are looking for table fare, without a doubt.
For sure.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, these are probably questions that you get at the shop at Lone Butte Sporting Goods all the time. And, we read about this stuff on the internet, but how to find out kind of what are the popular structures, or what do you, if you're heading to a new one of these larger lakes, say in your area, what are a couple of the, points to take on when you start heading out onto one of these larger lakes, say for the first time?
Well, today's day and age, Facebook, Instagram, those type of places are going to give you a lot of kind of advanced information. If I'm looking at a new lake, first thing I'm looking at is going to be the stocking reports, kind of seeing what they're putting in that lake.
Right.
And then jumping over to kind of the Angler Atlas or some metric maps to kind of figure out. And then looking at where I can stay, where I'm launching the boat, what kind of weather to expect and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
With these larger lakes, structure is a big part of Kokanee fishing. Is there kind of do you have kind of a go-to depth, say if you're hitting a new body of water, go-to depth that you're looking at the lake and also to run your gear at, or is there kind of a good beginner strategy, so to speak?
Honestly, it really depends on time of year and temperature of the water. Kokanee are kind of one of those fish. They don't like super warm water. They're going to be kind of in that 52-degree range. So if I'm going out early in the season, I'm going to be long lining kind of top 10 to 20 feet and looking for those drop-offs and fishing on the outside edges of those drop-offs. Going into, let's say, July, August, we're going to be looking for the deep parts of the lake, somewhere where those Kokanee can go down to that depths and stay cool. So,
right. So, I mean, off the top of your head, say somebody that's heading out, maybe start in the 20s for depth, running your equipment off, and then as the summer kind of comes, maybe down into the 40s or something like that.
For sure.
Right.
We kind of tie that in with the electronics we use, of course, as well. So if we got a fish finder, you're not seeing no fish on the fish finder, you're going to be fishing in that top 20 feet. If you're seeing those fish on your fish finder, you're going to be moving to them, so to speak. They could be anywhere in the water column if it's cold, or if it's or if you got weather coming in, they might push deeper. But yeah, you're going to start in that 20, 30 feet and start working from there.
So obviously electronics are an important part of this. I mean, the sounder technology has increased doublefold. It seems like every year they're getting better. I remember when I was on your boat, just blown away with how the GPS and the motor and the sounder all work with one. But I mean, how important are electronics when you're heading out on these lakes? Look for Kokanee.
It will definitely help you out. It's not something you have to have if you kind of go by the rules of thumb, so to speak. But it'll definitely give you an advantage, so to speak, to find where those fish are hanging out and kind of learn to read the electronics is the big one.
Right, right.
All the gear in the world, then still got to catch them.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it doesn't make them bite, that's for sure. And so even like an entry level fish finder depth sounder is going to show these kinds of fish because they're very school oriented, right?
For sure. Early on in the year, though, they're not going to be school oriented. They're going to be kind of spread out. Once that weather starts warming up and they start pushing down to that thermocline, that's when the electronics is going to show them a little better.
Gotcha. Now, a lot of people don't know that are maybe new to the fishery that the spawning cycle of kokanee. A lot of people assimilate what's going on in the lakes with like the trout spawning cycles, but maybe talk a little bit about what happens with kokanee in the spawning.
All right, so kokanee are fish that they're same idea as a sockeye, kind of mid-August, depending on which lake and what elevation, they're going to start to change color and going to start to go through the spawning cycle. Into September, they're going to be going up the creeks and spawning. Of course, depends if it's a diploid or a triploid kokanee. Yeah, it's September. You're definitely going to want to be fishing the deeper parts of the lake to avoid the spawning fish, so to speak.
Oh, gotcha. So, and then some of the lakes, I don't know if they're in your area, but the Freshwater Fishery Society is stocking now some triploid kokanees. Is there any up in the Cariboo yet, or has that program reached that far yet?
Actually, so the Cariboo region started out as a triploid fishery early on, and they've actually kind of started going back towards a diploid fish. They found it's maybe a hardier fish in some of these bigger lakes.
Right.
You'll still see some of those small lakes that they want to control the population of kokanee maybe a little better. They're going to stick to a triploid kokanee because triploids, of course, don't actually spawn. They might go through the process, but yeah, they don't actually produce young, so to speak, produce fry.
Right. So it seems, yeah, maybe it's not as well received or as popular as the triploiding process that's happening with trout throughout the province. The kokanee could be pretty hardy as a diploid too.
Exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. So, and I guess it's always a good idea to let newer, and I'm sure you talk all the time over the counter at the shop or with guests with your guiding company in the area about, certain towards the later part of the season, we're generally not, trying to target the reds or the spawning kokanee and kind of searching out in the middle of the lake for free swimming fish.
Of course, trying to get them into that good table fare again, right? Once they go through that process, they might get a little soft, so to speak.
Yeah, it was interesting. We were in the, we had a fishing tackle retail for decades, and a lot of people didn't know that the time frame was backwards compared to trout, just because they were in a lake. But it's an interesting stat about kokanee that a lot of people new to fishing don't know of. Lake bottoms. This is always a question that seems to, come up. Is it better fishing and better structure in those weedy lakes, or you seem to more target those rock bottom type shoal lakes?
Kokanee are a fish kind of early on in the spring. They will target those weed beds just for the mayfly and chironomid action that they produce. But going later in the season, they're actually a filter feeder, so they're going to filter zooplankton and daphne out of the water, so to speak, and that's actually what they live off of. So generally with a kokanee lake, we're going to be looking for a lake with depth and cooler water when freshwater fisheries is doing something with those lakes, bridge, those type of lakes. One thing you'll notice if you're fishing Bridge Lake, it's got the marl shoals and stuff like that, so it warms up a little bit quicker than a lake like Yakka that's got 400 feet in depth, right, in that darker brownish water. Both lakes produce kokanee, but yeah.
So I guess water clarity is a big part of that when you're trying to attract fish trolling.
Yeah, we had a lot of anglers last year. We're having a tough time catching fish because we had one of our wettest seasons since I've been here. And talking to some of the older, some of the older generation, they said it's one of the wettest seasons they've seen in a long time, and that put a lot of silt in the water. So lakes like Bridge Lake last year were more a tinted color versus the nice blue marl shoals you're used to, so to speak.
Yeah, gotcha. Makes sense. If there's no campfire ban, our lakes aren't going to be as clear. That's kind of one of our indicators in this area here.
For sure.
We got a question that popped in from Tanner Nabozniak. He said, addressed to you, Mark, what's your favorite trout and kokanee lake in the Cariboo?
Oh, combination lake.
Combo. Pick a combo lake.
Honestly, it's tough to go away from a lake like Bridge. You've got your rainbows on the shoals. You've got your lake trout you've also got your kokanee in the deeper water, and you can kind of work your day around what you want to fish. If you want to be early in the morning on those shoals fishing rainbows, and then in the middle of the day targeting kokanee at deeper depths, it's possible.
What a beauty. Nice to have a lake that has the best of both going on, and some nice clarity to fly fish and gear fish, kokanee and rainbows.
For sure.
Yeah, we got Mark Hopley jumped on. Hey, Mark from Fishing 97 podcast, and he asked Mark, what's your favorite patterns for kokanee on the fly?
Oh boy, easy answer.
Ouch.
Mayflies.
Mayflies. Now,
Early on in the spring,
as a surface presentation or the nymph?
we're going to be fishing nymph for kokanee. Yeah, put Horse Lake on your list for mayflies. Kokanee on the mayflies.
Well, you heard it from Mark Roseboom. Grab some mayfly nymphs if you're heading to Horse. And what kind of colors? Your regular browns and tans, or
Regular browns, regular tans. I usually like to have a couple of real slim profile mayflies in the fly box.
right?
Little secret.
Now, obviously, if we were going to do a show on fly fishing for kokanee, we'd have to tack on another hour here. But I'm just going to tap back quickly into that. What if somebody decided to go out that afternoon or that day and try them on the fly? What kind of setup would you suggest, or maybe technique quickly?
So going to be fishing them under an indicator. Generally, you're going to be looking for that drop off where the kokanee can go into that deeper water fairly quickly. So when the water temperature warms up, they can move into that deeper water and they can kind of cruise on the shoal and move back down. Anywhere from 10 to 30 feet is kind of what we're going to target.
So long leader, long tippet indicator fishing, similar to fishing a deep chronomid or a bloodworm.
Exactly.
Yeah, very cool. That sounds fun, actually. And I mean, I've hooked up a few on the fly, and it's a wake up call for sure. Cartwheeling, and it's a whole different fish.
Pretty acrobatic fish, yeah.
Well, since we were talking about equipment, anyone that spends any time in tackle stores becomes pretty well rehearsed in talking about rods and reels. And Mark owns and operates the Lone Butte sporting goods store. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions about preferred fishing equipment, because these are generally, when someone's new to kokanee and trolling, it's a bit of a different game and a bit of a different setup. So basically, what I wanted to get through first is about getting your equipment down. We can go into like rods and reels and line after, but there's a few different ways to get your presentations into those depths, and maybe kind of go through the options from riggers to weight to lead line.
All right. Easiest way to get your line to depth without spending a lot of money is going to be lead line, of course. Gives you a good idea of where you're fishing, 5 to 7 feet per color, so to speak, in depth. Guys fish a little bit of a longer leader on that, let's say anywhere from that 30 to 70 feet, just to get it away from the boat if it's early season.
Yeah. So if people don't know, lead line is a roll of multicolored, super fast sinking, heavy, odd material that you can spool onto a single action reel. And it's interesting you said a super long leader. I've always wondered what's the case with that. Why are people running such long leaders or long monofilament off of those lead lines? I mean, this is a question that always comes up.
All right. So fishing middle of summer, when you're fishing deep, the long leader doesn't matter. You could fish a 10-foot leader. It's not a big deal. Early on in the season or later in the fall, you're going to want that long leader because you're not going to be fishing as deep. You might be trying to target that 10 to 15 feet, and kokanee are boat shy. So you want to get that leader out, kind of that lure out long ways beyond the boat.
So you're reaching the depth with just a few colors, so to speak, and then you have a long leader to keep that presentation away from the boat.
Exactly.
Makes sense. So I guess option 2 then from lead line would be actual lead weights.
Yeah. So lead weights, you could go with inline weights. You could go with slip weights. Some guys are actually picking up on you can actually clip a weight to your line, so to speak, so somewhat like a modified downrigger. And right. Depending on the weight and your speed is going to depend on the depth. So it's not an exact science, but it'll definitely get you in the right area. If you don't think you're getting deep enough, put on bigger weights.
So if someone's starting out and maybe not sure if they want to jump into it yet or on a budget, probably a fixed weight might be the best way to start. But then they'll quickly graduate into what your beautiful boat is set up with, and maybe talk a little bit about that system. And
So we definitely spent some money on our boat on gear and electronics, and you guys probably noticed that Garmin trolling motor on the front there. It's a pretty slick little setup, but it definitely costs the money. So we got 2 Scotty downriggers on there. We generally will run 1 or 2 rods per downrigger and stack the lines, so to speak. Fish finder wise, we're running a Garmin 95 with a pan optic, so a PS30 transducer. That was kind of, I think, what you were really amazed about on the boat was being able to see the fish live.
Yeah, and holding still over top of them live too.
Yeah, it's a game changer. And then the electric motor on the front, Garmin came out with a brushless trolling motor, so there's no noise in that thing.
Right.
We did most of our trolling during the day with the electric. So, yeah. So
downriggers, for guiding, obviously the way to go. Same with people that are graduating into better equipment. What about like ball weight? You always see that there's like these lake trolling setups, and then there's traditional salmon downriggers. Is there a preferred weight for your Cannonball?
For sure. So electric downriggers, you're going to need a certain amount of weight to make that electric downrigger work properly. Ideally, I'd like to go with a smaller weight just to make it less of a profile to scare the Kokanee at that depth.
Interesting.
But we have to run kind of that 8-10 pound weights on our electrics there. Now on the manual side, you can go with smaller weights, so you can get down into that 2 to 3 pound weight. Of course, guiding wise, you're doing it all day, so you don't want to be manually pulling up that downrigger all day.
Gotcha.
Having said that, there is some equipment out there that can help a guy out with not having to bring your downrigger up and down, like the Max. Max has a product that dives and it'll pull your line down with it.
Right. So ideally, I mean, anglers that are set up with traditional salmon downrigger outfits, it's pretty much the same thing. You can get out there and use the same clip system, the same ball weights, the same cable or braided line, the same actual downriggers from salmon fishing.
Exactly. We're just going to scale down the gear size and the leader length, so to speak.
Right. Same clips and everything, though, and you're fine.
We do run the smaller clips usually for Kokanee gear. Just Kokanee are smaller fish, so we want them to be able to pull off that clip, so to speak.
Right. Well, makes sense, and I mean that makes it easier too if people, some of the salmon closures and some of the unpredictable seasons. A lot of anglers do already have some of that equipment, so it's an easy migration over to going to try Kokanee on a weekend, any given weekend.
Exactly.
Yeah. The big one, that a lot of people talk about, which is different, is, and maybe explain why, is the preferred rod lengths and actions. And there are a preferred softer rod, and maybe what are you using out on the boat with customers, and why with rod lengths?
All right, that's starting to be a pretty open-ended question these days, because companies figured out that it's a big market these days. So there's a lot of rod companies that are making rods in different lengths and kind of weights and specialties for Kokanee. The biggest thing with Kokanee fisheries is they are soft mouth fish, so we don't want to use it too stiff of a rod. We kind of pull the hook through their mouth if we're not careful enough. So we're using a light action or a ultralight action, depending on the lake and time of year. As I go later into the summer, I'm going to actually step down my rod weights, and I go to a lighter style rod, just because their mouth gets softer.
So the texture of the mouth will soften up in the warmer months.
Exactly, and as they start getting for sure.
Interesting. So ideally, you need something to snap off the rigger, but you need something that's soft that doesn't tear through the fish.
So we also use monofilament line because mono has stretch to it. One of the things a new Kokanee angler can do without having to buy all the fancy gear, so to speak, is go to what's called a snubber. So it's a little rubber snubber that will actually give their lure or give their line some stretch,
Right.
especially when that kokanee's fighting hard and doing its twists and turns out there.
Yeah, a few decades ago, when you'd head into a sporting goods shop, the kokanee section would be the size of a window pane. Now it's a few 4x8 sheets of pegboard. Now sometimes it's a whole aisle, and something that was all that used to be there was a snubber, wedding ring, and a couple Dodgers. But things have changed. How do you rig a snubber? Where does that go? And is that really something that's important, or is that just one of those things?
If you're finding that you're losing a lot of fish, you can definitely add a snubber into that gear. It's going to make all the difference in the world.
Like a little shock absorber, shock cord.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, snubbers are one of those tools that they're, let's say, 8 to 12 inches long. So most guys, when you get late in the season, they're running really short gears. So that's one of the things that's going to increase your leader length if you run them under the Dodger. Most guys are running on top of the Dodger, so to speak.
I see. Yeah.
Keep that leader length.
Still on to tackle, of course. This could be a whole live feed or podcast on kokanee. It seems that more recently the obsession has been with all the different types of presentations that they'll take and the combinations. And when I was fishing with you this summer, you were changing up equipment quite a bit until you found, working both sides, till you found a color and even a leader length and Dodger combo that worked for you. Maybe to talk a little bit about a couple basic setups if someone was to, grab some equipment their first time out. Is there a couple combos that work throughout most of the seasons, or at most of the lakes?
For sure. So Dodgers are probably your go-to nowadays. So you're probably going to use a 4-inch or a 6-inch Dodger. Now,
Right.
the Dodgers we're using for kokanee are going to be a back and forth presentation. They're not going to be a circular presentation.
So for everyone that's watching, that's something that moves like this.
Exactly.
Yeah, instead of like a flasher that's running a loop cycle, it's more of a swimming bait. Or
exactly.
Yeah.
So we're going to pair a Dodger up usually in a silver with a movie tape or a pink or something along those lines, brighter colors, with either a hoop with wedding band or a small spoon like a Dick Knight or a humdinger or a mini G spoon by goods there. Depending on time of year, change up your leader length. You probably start the year with a 16 to 20-inch leader, and by end of summer, we're down into that 12 to 14-inch leader.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Why did the leader length change with the temperatures?
So kokanee are a fish that we're actually trying to make mad. We're trying to instigate the strike, so to speak.
Right.
So early on in the year, we're usually trolling at a slower speed. So let's say 1.1, 1.2 miles per hour. And our Dodger is going to go back and forth a little slower.
Right.
And a longer leader, like they're kind of lethargic, let's say. And then kind of going into July, actually put a bend in that Dodger to really get going back and forth fast. You kind of saw me doing that a bit there.
Yeah, I did.
And then shortening up that leader length. And what you notice is that Dodger moves back and forth faster, and that it's actually pulling that hoochie or the spoon a lot quicker back and forth.
Yes, and so that Dodger's commanding the action, considering the length on that presentation behind it. What about colors, man? I mean, you go into the shops now, or you look online and you see all the colors. What should somebody be looking for? I mean, we used to know it as reds or pinks. Is that still safe, or?
Pretty safe. Definitely by far the number one selling color on the rack is going to be pink,
right.
Followed by orange, and actually one of my personal favorites in the Cariboo here is actually chartreuse or a lime green, and that's actually what we ended up using on sulfurous today.
Yeah, I was shocked to see that. I hadn't kokanee fished a lot in the last few decades, and when you were pulling out chartreuse lures, I thought, okay, that obviously those change with different lake clarities and different different bodies of water,
different depths as well.
Right.
colors do change as you go deeper. A lot of the products we use are using UV, so ultraviolet or glow. I definitely lean towards the glow a lot more these days because we do push down deeper in our Cariboo lakes, it seems.
Got ya. Um, uh, Another big topic. I know that we had gone through a whole bunch of different liquids and things, but is bait, and it's pretty important. I learned that for sure right away out in the boat with you this summer. But there's a whole array of baits that you can run off of those smaller hoochies and spoons, and maybe go through a short list of some of those preferred baits. I mean, that's a big part of it now, isn't it?
It is. Kokanee are definitely a fish that react to scent. So let's say like a tuna oil or a krill oil. Kind of one of the ones that we use to get them mad is going to be a garlic scent. We start combining different scents and making kind of cures. A lot of people will see kokanee fishermen using colored corn as well.
Yes.
So a single piece of corn on the hook, and that's basically used as a sponge to hold that scent.
Gotcha.
And disperse that scent. Yeah,
A strong sponge.
exactly.
Yeah. So Ian Carter just popped up with a question. He said, bait with a question mark. What do you use? And then we just covered that. If you're just joining in, there's quite a few different ways to rig up bait on kokanee equipment, but the preferred is the short list that Mark had just mentioned. Do you find that those baits are working better on the smaller hoochies that everyone's using, or off of those small spoons, or doesn't matter?
Bait definitely will help. Changing scents is gonna all of a sudden make all the difference in the world.
I saw that this summer. It was pretty shocking.
Yeah. One of my go-tos in the middle of summer actually is going to be krill. We use a lot of krill as well.
Right.
We cure the krill to kind of make it firmer to stay on the hook better.
Yeah.
And yeah, so krill's one of my favorites.
Is that the best way to do that? It would be for somebody to pick up pre-cured and pre-dyed krill from a tackle shop. Then
you could definitely going to be easier if you're new to it. If you want to make your own, we also sell all the stuff to kind of make your own baits and scents and go that route, of course.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Are you rigging your own hooks on those hoochie rigs? Like, are you upgrading them to say like a different snell hook or octopus or something like that, or is most of the stuff right out of the package good to go?
Most of the stuff is pretty good right out of the package. The Cariboo region has some bigger kokanee, so sometimes we do rig up our own little bigger size hooks. My preferred is going to be a number 4 or number 2 size hook.
Right.
I use a lot of BMC Texac hooks. A lot of guys use Gats use as well. Eagle Claw's got some hooks in the game now as well. So
yeah, just grabbing a little more on those soft mouth fish, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's amazing that when you look at a lot of people always compared down rigging and fishing for sockeye out in the chuck to downsizing, but very similar to, I think that used to be, there was like the 3 S's to follow when you were trolling for sockeye, which was I think slow, short, and I can't remember what the third S was, but a lot of that gear really is just smaller version now for kokanee, which is pretty cool.
I'm actually starting to see some of the ocean guys grabbing some kokanee gear and trying it on the ocean as well these days.
Yeah, a lot of opportunity in the Cariboo region where you are for kokanee, and yeah, less closures to worry about, and longer summers and so forth. Looks like we have a question that just popped in from Nicholas Schley. Hopefully I pronounced your name correct. Is a deep 6 an okay way to get kokanee? I heard it scares the fish. Maybe Mark, explain what a deep 6 is and then answer that one.
All right, so deep 6 is going to be kind of like a planer board that goes under the water, so to speak, and will get you to a set depth. Right. I would, depending on the day, most of the time I don't think a deep 6 is going to scare away the kokanee, considering we use downrigger balls and flashers and stuff like that.
Right.
A lot of the deep 6s these days are bright colored, shiny. They're kind of going right along with the kokanee fishery. So definitely another way to target kokanee without having to buy a downrigger. So
Right. So what happens? Your line actually will release off of that, or is it just change shape or something? Or
Depends on the model. Some of them will stay kind of in that shape that pull them down, and as you put tension on them, they're going to kind of pull up. A lot of the deep sixes will actually release and kind of go straight in line with your line, so that you're not pulling the drag.
gotcha.
Yeah,
Almost like a breakaway system.
exactly.
Yeah. And while we're still talking about tackle, maybe let the viewers know kind of what this is always a question. It happens all the time, no matter what people are spin casting or in the ocean is about like pound test. And, you know, maybe what's the preferred reel for trolling for these guys, and maybe a preferred pound test for spooling your reels with.
Okay. Test poundage, we don't go too heavy simply because you want that stretch in the line. So most people are going to be somewhere in that 8 to 10 pound range on their main line. And here's one that I'll throw a bunch of people for a loop on this one. We actually sometimes will step up our leader pound test. So we'll actually go to a heavier pound test on our leader between our Dodger and our Hoochie. And that's where our Dodger actually throws the Hoochie a bit more.
Oh, because of it's a more of a taut line.
Exactly.
Interesting.
It's not as limited. Yeah.
So not all the time, but that's an option if you're looking to experiment with actions on whatever bait you're using behind a Dodger or a flasher.
Exactly.
And what about those smaller flashers like you see Hotspot and the other companies they're putting out? You see them on shelves. Are they just as productive, or seems to be the guides are using Dodgers? Is there a reason there?
Dodgers definitely getting that back and forth action. A lot of those smaller flashers that you're seeing are actually designed to go in that back and forth action as well. So there's starting to be some overlap there. So definitely read the packaging when you're buying flashers and your Dodgers.
Yeah. So just to recap, their line pound test between 6 and 10, and then something quite similar for tippet or leader.
Yep.
Your presentation. And once in a while, like Mark said, something heavier might even give more command to that Hoochie or spoon behind it. Interesting. Couple questions about lakes. I mean, that area that you're in is just incredibly riddled with lakes. It's a spectacular area to be. Are we seeing kokanee in some of the smaller lakes, or is it just generally a larger lake kind of scenario happening off of Highway 24 and where you are?
So I'm gonna kind of broaden the area here a little bit. If you take kind of a half an hour drive to an hour drive in any given direction, there's going to be a lake with kokanee in it, if not several.
Wow.
Definitely not one of these areas, not an area where we just have big lakes with kokanee in it. You know, I took you guys to Sulphur's Lake. That's where we did the show. Not a huge lake. The average fisherman with a regular 12 or 14 foot boat is not going to have any issue on a lake like that.
Right.
Going over a little bit north of us, we got, let's say, Root Lake, another awesome kokanee fishery. Mm-hmm. And then up even into that Laklahatch area, there's going to be lakes like Chimney and Timothy and that sort of area that have kokanee as well.
So there's a whole bunch of lakes to choose from, and now you have a pretty busy guiding program, Lone Butte's Fishing Adventures. I was going to say Sport Fishing Adventures, but Lone Butte Sport Fishing Adventures, correct? How many different lakes are you guys operating on, or are you able to guide people with?
We actually run 2 boats now. So we've got the boat that you guys were in. We also have a fly fishing boat as well. So we picked that one up at the beginning of last year, and of course with COVID, we didn't push the guiding too much. But it's definitely going to be the direction we push in. So we have, let's say, anywhere from 15 to 25 lakes, depending on the year and what we're targeting.
Awesome. Now, are you also you're able to utilize having some of your customers stay at some of the resorts around those lakes? Are you in that program where you're able to kind of cross work with some of the resorts on the lakes and have people staying in a different varieties of accommodations?
For sure. So we work with our local resorts as much as we can. Generally, we we make recommendations kind of depending on what they want to fish. And it is a little tougher up here because there is quite a few different resorts, but they are pretty busy as well, right?
Yeah, which it's a neat option, especially with people being able to just explore what's available in their backyard, and it's not that far from some of the larger cities that people think, and a few more hours and you're into that awesome area that you're in. So maybe just let's recap with some of what are some of the experiences that you guys are offering up there with your guiding company?
So we definitely we can tailor it to whatever anybody's looking for, whether that's doing some sightseeing and some fishing. We target kokanee, lake trout, and rainbow is kind of our main species that we do.
Right.
And depending on the size of the lake or what people's preferences are, being fishing style and stuff like that, and what's going on at the time, we'll kind of pair that up, so to speak, with the best options for those people. And then kind of come in winter time, we do guide for ice fishing as well. So it's another side of the business. Yeah.
So is Kokanee turning into quite a bit more of a popular side of the guiding business alongside with the retail?
So when I started guiding, it was a way for me to get out of the store and actually promote some of the fisheries locally as well, and show off some of the things we do. There was a couple of film companies I worked with right off the get-go to kind of get kokanee fishing on the map, and from there the Cariboo's kind of taken off a little bit. Yeah, definitely grow inside of it.
Yeah, and it seems like it's just every year there's more and more information, more fisheries popping up, and more general interest around kokanee. It's nice to see, and it's something that a lot more people are starting to pay attention to now. There's even dedicated Facebook groups to it, and you're seeing more of kokanee information and tackle in the magazines. So there is definitely a culture growing around it.
For sure.
Yeah, looks like we got a question that popped up from Nicholas Slay. It says, "What's your biggest kokanee, Mark?"
My biggest personal kokanee is going to be in that 4.5 pound range. I have had a couple of fish come through the store at over 5 pounds locally.
Wow, that's amazing fish.
Yeah, they are.
Incredible. We're approaching almost the hour mark, and I just wanted to thank you for joining in. This is Fishing BC's live show, the first of many. Also, these are going to be broadcasted across the Instagram platform as live, as well as these joint Facebook and YouTube / combination live feeds. Mark, let everybody know how they can find you and your business. What's the best way to contact you for the upcoming season, and where your shop is?
All right. My shop's in Lone Butte, BC, kind of the gateway to the Highway 24 there. You can call me at 250-355-2217, or look me up on Facebook and Instagram. Google the store name, that will come up.
What's the handles on Instagram and Facebook? Is it Lone Butte?
So it'll be at lbfishingadventures.com or lbfishingadventures, and at lbsportinggoods.com.
Awesome. And that's how you can find Mark. And Mark runs an incredibly cool and informative retail shop right in Lone Butte. And they're also out guiding the area with the most recent up-to-date local knowledge. Definitely a cool place to stop in when you're traveling that area in the Cariboo. Thanks for joining in tonight, Mark. It was nice to talk to you and see you again. We shot that video that everybody saw kind of leading into it. I believe they're being released. It was released today on Fishing BC's networks, and that was with Katie Watt as well. We're going to be signing off. Thanks for everyone for joining in, and hopefully everyone has a safe winter. We've only got a few more months before we're heading back up to some of these areas to lake fish.
For sure. Thanks for having me, Brent.
Yeah, thanks again, Mark, and thanks for everyone for tuning in to Fishing BC, and we will see everyone again shortly. Take care out there.